is Dr. Pham with the Reach Center, and I wanted to talk today about orthopedic surgery in adults with CP. I think that we all love the idea of being able to fix muscles, bones, joints, etc. I think that we're still learning in the adult CP population about how much surgery, when surgery. Many of you will hear in children we do what is called SEMLS, single event multi-level surgery. And historically, the orthopedic surgeons every year would do a different surgery. So you might start with tendo-Achilles lengthening or gastrocnemius recession. Then you would move to hamstring lengthening, then psoas lengthening, then you might transfer rectus femoris, and they refer to it as birthday syndrome. Every year you would have a different surgery, a new rehab. So then eventually what came about is something called the SEMLS, or single event multi-level surgery, where you do everything at once. It's a big surgery, it's a big rehab. Children lose a lot of function, regain function, and hopefully are better than prior to surgery, but it takes a long time to get there. When we think about adults, I think the outcomes are completely different. I think sometimes we may be more likely to see benefit from some surgery, but not all of the surgery. So for example, when I see a patient, I might think to myself, wow, in an ideal world, knowing their exam, knowing their biomechanics of walking, in some cases knowing their gait study, I would want to fix X, Y, and Z. But knowing this person in front of me, I think that Y is going to be the most impactful from a functional standpoint. And I don't want this person to lose so much function that they maybe don't improve from it, or don't get to that point where they were even at the functional level that they were prior to surgery. Obviously, the goal is to improve beyond that, right? It takes a lot of rehab, it takes a lot of intense therapy and engagement, not only in the therapy, but also in home rehab to make those gains. So I think it's very individualized in the adult population, and from my standpoint, I think a gait study is incredibly helpful, and I think really frank conversations about what our goals are and what are reasonable goals with a surgical intervention are really important. The other thing that I highly recommend is something that we call prehab, which is the rehab before we do something. So if we're gonna talk with our orthopedic surgeon friend and they're gonna lengthen a muscle, that muscle is gonna change, it's gonna work differently. And so what we need to do is improve cardiovascular health, improve strength, all before we sort of reduce your function and then have to build it up. So I think those are some of the key points when we think about orthopedic surgery, and obviously the more research we have, the better. And so I think over time, my hope is that we'll have more and more data points to have a better idea of who will do well from a surgical standpoint in an adult who has CP. When do we do surgery? How much surgery do we do? And this is such a heterogeneous population, it makes it very challenging, but my hope is that we'll get there in the coming years. Thank you so much for listening.